Um, Lisa, I've been reading your book,
Ah,
and I've watched a lot of videos of you, and I must say they are really something is resonating.
yeah,
But at the same time, after I came in contact with this message, there is such a fear
yeah,
of not knowing anywhere who I am, and
yeah. Yeah, this can happen. It can be incredibly scary waking up
I
with,
can't orient, you know, and
yeah,
it's strange.
yeah, it can be really, really scary. The
Yeah,
thing is your freedom's there behind the fear. It's even in the fear, but we can just say behind the fear is in it's aware of the fear. It knows the fear, but that fear
yeah,
is the person. That fear is the separate person that isn't you. It's not your fear, it's being experienced. The separate you that's being experienced, though, fears the fear. It thinks that it can't cope or the fear will kill it. So it's very afraid of the fear and wants to repress the fear. But
okay,
awakeness, aliveness, that which knows the fear, has never been affected and is totally free. But it's as if that person that feels fear is kind of blocking the awareness, the awakeness, blocking it and holding it as if,
yeah,
or like holding it back as if it's separate. But
right,
it's but the best thing that when you feel separate and when you feel afraid that you could do is just take some time and lay in a safe place on your bed or sit on the sofa and just gently allow the focus to rest on the fear. This isn't you, this isn't something you do, but like if I said to you, could you stand up now, the body more than likely would. But that's not you standing up and it's not you that puts the focus there. But if there's a focus put onto it, then it allows it to come in the light. Normally, what we do is we feel this fear underneath and then we go into very high thinking. So we lock ourselves up in our head or we go and do activity. And this isn't about getting somewhere. Forget the idea of getting enlightened and getting somewhere, because there is no one that will get enlightened or get somewhere. It's just about the collapse of that separate entity that believes it's separate from life and that there's a world out there that it's afraid of. And at the moment, that fear is being highlighted because most probably you're not acting out so many of your old patterns. You're not doing so many things to repress it. And so now it's okay for it to come up. Who you are is that boundlessness which can take anything, that never dies. It can contain it all. You are that which knows the fear. And the person is afraid of the fear. The person wants to stay in its own little world of I know something. I know what I am. I know where I've got to go. I know what I've got to do.
and when you talk about it now, it does really resonate, absolutely, and it does make sense.
Yeah.
But when I'm, let's say, with my parents or something, I feel like I'm getting insane or something, you know, it's
Why do you feel like you're getting insane with your parents?
uh, just with any kind of people that was hanging out with for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, as I said, because I can't orient myself anymore,
Yeah.
and to I don't know how to express it. Uh, um, it is easy to do to keep the focus in the body when I'm alone, but when I'm with other people, it's really spinning in the body, you know, and it's not easy to keep the focus by myself. I'm so distracted by thought and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what it does. It tries to stay in the thought land. But maybe there
Yeah,
can be a noticing that when there is compulsive thinking, that underneath you're feeling terrified, and then there can just be a movement to that. But this isn't. This sometimes takes seemingly time to undo
mm,
itself. It's like it had so much energy put into it, the separate self, being someone. And it is hard being around other people that are strongly identified, because they're
totally.
all about getting. That anyone that's identified is always about getting and what they can get from you and what they can get
Yeah,
from life. It's a total different way of being. I forget what it's like until I, every so often, come in contact with people and I'm like, oh yeah, everybody else's life is about obtaining. Like
mm,
nobody's about enjoying their life. They're all about the next thing to obtain, the next thing to obtain, the next thing, even if it's just jobs around the house. even if it's just to attain the evening time or to do their checklist or to earn a bit more money or to buy a table. It's always about obtaining, and this collapse back into everything is the collapse of needing anything and obtaining anything. Even though life happens and this body moves to look after itself and moves towards pleasure, nothing is needed. There's nothing which needs to be taken from this world and put inside. So when that begins to crumble and you're not following that path of everyone else of getting, then it can be very hard interacting with other people that look at life like that. And energetically, we're very sensitive, so you can feel the energy of that seeking.
Totally, yeah. It's like in the body, like two knives are scratching each other or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm around such people.
Yeah. And then you might find fear comes up in you because you suddenly feel kicked in to doing that approving of the other person or wanting approval of. And because you're becoming more sensitive, it hurts more. Whereas if you're more cut off into the head and you're more unaware of what's going on, then you're not sensitive to what we're doing to ourselves. Most people are constantly uncomfortable because they're not doing their natural expression. They're doing this fake expression that they've been taught. So they're always feeling uncomfortable, and they're never allowed to be themselves. And being themselves might not be this big outrageous person that you expect it to be, but it's in Ramesh Balsekar, a speaker that I used to say, in every given moment do exactly what you feel like doing, knowing there is nobody that does it. And what he meant, it's not that you choose to do anything you feel like doing, because there isn't a person there that could choose, but that person that's always trying to maintain this image of itself collapses, and then in each moment it's a feeling. The body's acting rather than the intellect of I've got to be like this. Sometimes we need the intellect to help us with our functioning, but not very often. Most of the time the body knows the impulses, like driving the car. It knows when to say no, it knows when something's inappropriate, it knows when someone's lying, it knows when to move away from someone. But other people that are separate entities, they're so cut off from their bodily feelings, they're always going against what they feel. They're always not trusting the feeling and trusting the intellect.
This is such another way of seeing things and experiencing.
It's totally,
so different,
but it's so alive and radical. Like it's really living up in your brain and up in your interpretation of yourself. And this contracted I is such a different way to just living. And then this freedom is so sweet because it's not about the obtaining of life. It's about life happening. Even though the body moves towards pleasure and avoids pain, that's the way it's programmed, it's not about the obtaining of anything. It's not about getting to the pleasures. It's about what's actually happening.
Wow.
And it becomes very radically alive and intimate.
Yeah. Might it be when the body or when whatever begins to awaken that when I do, if you said that I feel things more, that also the childhood trauma comes up and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean that doesn't, even after this explosion that happened in Bali, there's still sometimes these old patterns that act itself out here. That might be a never-ending lifetime cycle. A lot of them disappeared and crumbled when this contraction exploded into life or back into itself. But so a lot of them passed, but there's still stuff stored in the body, not just from this body's life, but many generations of humans which have been bred into this body. Like many patterns. So those I think are like an endless thing, and in a way you're always picking up new patterns. But what happens when you're separate is you're always repressing them. And you're always in denial of them, and you're always acting out of them, but in denial of it, kind of. Like and so say if you see something which triggers an old fear from the past, what the body does when you're separate is it just denies it and cuts off and goes into the head. And then it does maybe horrible things, or it acts out of that. When there's nobody there anymore, then they just kind of come up and spill over and
I see that in you. When you're talking, you're so naturally talking. When other people are talking, it feels like they they are thinking before they're talking,
Yeah.
like I do, or somebody, and you are just talking.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, they often have an agenda. An agenda. They often want my approval, or they want to be loved, or they don't want to make a fool of themselves, or so there's lots of different agendas that come up, or they want to seem enlightened, whatever it is, and then it comes in and out. So I'll be speaking with someone and it might come up, they suddenly are trying to be something again, and then it dissolves, and then there's just speaking for nobody happening, nobody speaking to no one, and it just happens, and then they come back up, and then another position's taken again. Yeah. So you can notice that. So sometimes people get irritated with other people that call in, because they can feel that energetic shift. Because we're so telepathic as humans, we really, really can feel. The body knows so much. When you stop living in the intellect, the body knows so much about the other.
Yeah, totally.
It really does. This is why most probably you feel uncomfortable when you go around family and friends, because you can feel all their patterns as well as your patterns and all their dynamics. It's like,
yeah, totally. And do you feel this too when you go to your parents or something?
Yes,
or to
totally,
other people?
totally.
Does this body also feel this kind of irritation?
Irritation, yeah, it can feel irritated, but it's not so strong. But I do have this thing where I can just shut off, because I speak with so many people and I travel so much, and I meet lots of people that are seeking. I can have this thing where I can shut it off in a way, like I can, because I can be really. I don't really like to talk about this too much public, but I can be really psychic, but it's so invasive sometimes. Like I don't want to know. I just have this thing where it's like a switch off, but sometimes it comes on, and then I suddenly find myself crying when I'm sitting with someone, and you can tell the difference between when it's not your tears. I just can't explain what that feels like, but you're just crying for someone. Like you can feel their sadness. It's not them. There isn't really a them, and there's not a you that feels their sadness, but there is sadness from that bundle of energy.
Just as that the body is really, really empathic in a way.
But really sensitive. There's so many things. But often I have this mechanism where I tune out, because I don't, there's a tuning out happening. I can't explain exactly how it happens, but I can feel it where it's like, because I can also begin to tap into their thoughts, and I don't want to.
It's good to hear that this is possible to block out this.
Yeah. It's like you'll begin to notice it. It's just like a force that comes, but it's not my force, and it kind of does it, and then sometimes it doesn't do it, and I'm like, I'm tired. And
I have one more question. Do you think when there are really deeply rooted traumata in the body, or an energetic contraction, do you think that Vipassana or yoga or something like that can help? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I think these are all. I think everything's really. All these sort of practices are really beautiful, but it's all. The important part is about not focusing on the destination, and just kind of doing it, but doing it in that moment, and not focusing about getting enlightened or getting rid of these, but just an exploration as to what this body contains and holds. But I wouldn't stick to one thing, because everything comes with its downside. So even though it's really beautiful to sit there meditating for 10 hours, there also can be a learnt habit of cutting off. So I would also do emotional release techniques.
Okay, so like therapy?
I like more feelings of if I was going to recommend things, it'd be more sort of primal therapy, or therapies that are more feeling based than too much thinking based. There can be a vague working out of the patterns, but more feeling of what the body feels. But these are great things.
Primal therapy.
This primal therapy that I've heard of. And what I used to do, and still do, there is a doing of this sometimes if there's an old pattern that comes up that's painful in Lisa's body, is just resting the attention on that. So just moving the attention onto that, and you'll be amazed at how quickly it changes and how orgasmic it is. And there's nobody resisting it. Like all feelings, even these past traumas are really orgasmic. There's nothing that life doesn't want or rejects, and this is part of being human. We've got a lot of trauma and beauty in this information, but a lot of trauma. Like the things that humans have done in order to get here, what we do to each other constantly. You know, like when you're separate and you're a trader, it's all about getting more than the other. And we do terrible things to each other in order to get more than the other. So, and this has gone on for many, many generations, and what we've done to our environment and what we've done to animals, and this is stored in the body. And this isn't something about getting rid of. The body's never going to be totally unconditioned. It has to, in a way, have certain flavor to it. But it is a really wise thing to do, to understand them and relax them and come to terms with these sorts of things, especially if you've had a difficult experience in this life. But never look at it as getting enlightened or getting to enlightenment. Your nature is enlightenment, and at some point there is going to be a shift from being this tight, contracted energy which is claiming all these traumas, which is claiming all these habits, which is claiming all these ways of being, to this absolute stillness. And then this person with its habits and conditions will appear in that, but will no longer be the experiencer. But that will happen by itself. But it's really wise and a great thing to do, to work on the person, rather than to just fall into a pit of despair and say, it's hopeless, I'm beingness, and beingness can't do anything, and I'm never going to get there. That's like to just keep working on these neurosis and these patterns and improving relationships is really beautiful. And to explore what it is to be human and not live by this crazy, stupid, ridiculous idea of obtaining money and obtaining possessions. This is such a stupid idea. It takes people their whole life to realize it was never about that. Like to explore.
Is it the same with love?
Huh?
Is it the same with love or anything? When you say money or possessions, do you think it's the same with love?
Yes, I do think it's the same with love, but I think that in romantic relationships there can be a beautiful exploration of what it is to be human, to have the human experience. Whereas as money, it seems a lot more... With money, it's different. With money, it's all about getting for you. Whereas in the relationship, there's an amazing reflection that can happen. And also what can happen in relationship is that you fall so much in love with the other person that you totally dissolve in that. So in the relationship, there can be many more tastes, but there can be so much hate and violence in relationships because the person believes that the other person is it, which is totally untrue. But I think it's, I mean, what more beautiful thing could there be to do in this world than to explore what it is to be human, rather than just to be told you got to earn money, you got to work for the future, you got to have kids, you got to live like this. I mean, it seems like a prison camp when I go to these weddings and these family parties. I'm like, it's like everybody is like living and working and being this certain response. But to explore all these different responses is really beautiful. But none of that is you. Who you are is the stillness which is watching it all, but it's watching through the human instrument at the moment. So this human instrument is totally cool and fascinating and amazing, because whatever the human interprets is what the world is. There is no fixed world, there is no fixed reality. So whatever it's interpreting is what the world is. So it's like by exploring the human, you're exploring the world as well. Because you look through this brain. So the way that you interpret that TV is like the brain is the human in a way. Like you can't separate it out. The way that you look at others and see others and the thought patterns that come up, it's amazing. This human instrument. But that's not you. That's the instrument that you, as that essence, as that awakeness, looks through. But it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
And I somehow kind of say that I somehow want to know that essence that I am.
Yeah, you and you
But I
can
can't.
no, you can't know it, but everything that's known is it.
Oh.
Everything that is it. So you can't, and it's the most intimate sense of being. It's that which knows everything, but not as a thought, not as an idea, as that vastness. It's what knows the feelings, it's what knows the sensation, it's what looks out of the eyes, it's what feels the legs against the seat, it's what hears the breathing, it's what feels Khaleesi next to me, it's what knows the thinking. It's fantastic, it's what knows the room and the space and the distance. The most intimate sense of being alive. Yeah, can't really say too much more about it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to come to Berlin. You have a talk in Berlin?
Oh yeah. You're from Berlin?
No, I'm from Vienna.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
I wrote you an email some time ago and I asked you if you come to Vienna, but you said no. And now I'm maybe coming to Berlin.
Well, the last 2 years I've been coming to Vienna. You missed it, but not this year.
To Dana?
No, not to Dana. Not to Dana, although no Dana, but this guy called Paul organised the talks at his work. Paul Lukin.
Oh,
He knows Dana as well.
Okay. Cool, yeah. Maybe we see you in Berlin.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you for
There's
the
a
talk.
youth hostel very close to the talks in Berlin that you can find on the website. And if it's not on the website,
pajamas or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, Stefan, the organizer, lives very close, so he can also recommend anyway.
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you.
Lovely to speak
amazing.
with you, Kevin.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.